It was a cold, fog-heavy night on Highway 67 in Texas, the kind of night where visibility drops to just a few feet and every sound seems amplified. Deputies Mark Hanson and Tyler Reed had been patrolling the stretch for years, familiar with its winding curves and the occasional stranded motorist. That night, they received a seemingly routine call. A car reported stalled on the shoulder, headlights blinking into the thick mist. Nothing about it seemed unusual at first, but as they drove closer, an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of their stomachs, a premonition that something wasn't right. As the deputies approached the area, they noticed the road was eerily silent. Not a bird, not a passing car, nothing to break the stillness. The fog seemed to curl and twist around their headlights, creating shadows that danced in impossible ways. When they parked the patrol car along the shoulder, a faint sound caught Tyler's attention, a rustling, maybe, in the trees just beyond the ditch. Mark shrugged it off, thinking it was a deer or a stray animal, but the feeling of being watched lingered, gnawing at the edge of their awareness. Minutes passed, and the deputies moved cautiously toward the reported stalled vehicle. The mist muffled every sound, making their footsteps feel unnaturally loud. As they approached, there was no car, only the emptiness of the fog-laden road. Confused, they radioed dispatch to report their location and the lack of any stalled vehicle. Their voices echoed strangely over the radio, almost as if the fog was swallowing their words. The dispatcher's response came back delayed, static-filled, and disjointed, adding a layer of tension neither of them could shake. Mark suggested they circle back to the patrol car and wait for backup, but Tyler, glancing down the empty highway, couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn deeper into the fog. The road behind them now seemed distant, almost unfamiliar, and the silence pressed in on them. The deputy's usual confidence was gone, replaced by a creeping anxiety that something, or someone, was out there, just beyond sight. Shadows seemed to shift along the tree line, though there was nothing there when they focused on it. Moments later, witnesses in the nearby town reported seeing the patrol car parked oddly on the side of the highway, lights flickering intermittently. But when anyone approached, the deputies were gone. Their footprints in the fog were there 1 second, vanished the next, as if they had been swallowed by the night itself. Panic began to ripple through the local police department as search teams mobilized, but the fog was relentless, covering every trace. From that moment on, Highway 67 became a place marked by fear and mystery, a road where 2 deputies vanished without a trace, leaving a chilling emptiness that haunted the town for years. As soon as deputies Hanson and Reed were reported missing, the local authorities scrambled into action. Police cars flooded Highway 67, their lights cutting through the thick fog like searchlights in a storm. Teams combed the roadside, pulled into every ditch, and scanned the dense woods that lined the highway, but the deputies were nowhere to be found. Bloodhounds were brought in, noses pressed to the damp earth, picking up scents that seemed to disappear into the darkness, leaving even the most experienced trackers baffled. Dispatchers worked frantically, trying to piece together the deputies' last movements. Radio logs were replayed over and over, but the static-heavy transmissions offered little insight. There were reports from drivers who claimed to see the patrol car parked with its lights flickering, but no deputies inside. Some said they caught glimpses of shadows moving unnaturally through the fog, and a few even swore they heard urgent calls for help that vanished the moment they strained to listen. Each lead only deepened the sense of unease gripping the investigation. Search parties extended into the surrounding towns and nearby highways. Volunteers, colleagues, and family members trudged through underbrush, calling out names that echoed eerily in the night. Local news crews picked up the story, broadcasting live updates that made the disappearance national news almost immediately. Despite every effort, the deputies seemed to have vanished into thin air. Maps were drawn, timelines reconstructed, and yet every trail led to dead ends, heightening the tension in a town already on edge. Rumors began circulating almost immediately. Some whispered about ambushes or violent encounters, while others speculated that the deputies had stumbled onto something far more sinister than a simple highway call. Theories of criminal involvement, cult activity, or even supernatural interference took root, feeding the fear that clung to the foggy stretches of Highway 67. Each theory was debated heatedly by locals, yet none offered answers. The mystery seemed to grow with every passing hour, as if the night itself was conspiring to keep the truth hidden. Despite continuous efforts, weeks turned into months, and the case began to stagnate. Investigators meticulously documented everything, from tire tracks to discarded items, but the trail was cold. The foggy highway had swallowed not only the deputies but the possibility of closure. For the families, friends, and fellow officers, the disappearance was a wound that would not heal, a haunting void in the heart of the town. Highway 67 became a silent witness, standing ominously under the stars, a stretch of road that held its secrets tight, resisting every attempt to uncover them. Even after the initial search ended with no results, strange clues began to surface that sent chills through both investigators and locals. Truckers traveling the long stretch of Highway 67 reported seeing the deputies' patrol car driving alone late at night, its lights cutting through the fog, but no one was behind the wheel. Some claimed the car would vanish from sight only to reappear a few miles down the road, as if moving on its own accord. These reports were difficult to verify, but they added a layer of unease that refused to fade. Locals started talking about sounds that didn't make sense, whispers in the trees, footsteps crunching in the underbrush when no one was there, and occasional, piercing screams echoing through the fog. One elderly resident swore she saw a figure resembling Deputy Hanson standing at the edge of the highway at midnight, staring blankly into the distance before dissolving into the mist. These accounts were dismissed by some as hysteria, but for those who experienced them, the reality was terrifyingly vivid. Odd items began appearing along the roadside. A patrol badge, scuffed and half-buried in mud. A single boot, clean despite the surrounding grime. And once, a radio speaker, still faintly crackling with static, as though trying to broadcast a long-lost message. None of these items directly explained what had happened to the deputies, but they hinted at a presence, something deliberate, almost taunting anyone who searched for answers. The pattern of these discoveries suggested someone or something was watching, aware of every move made in the search for the missing men. Even long after the events, Highway 67 seemed to resist normalcy. Fog rolled in with unnatural consistency, and drivers often reported lights flickering along the road for no apparent reason. Some who stopped to investigate claimed to see shadows moving in impossible ways, or glimpses of figures standing just beyond visibility. The atmosphere of the highway was suffused with an unshakable tension, a quiet that was almost alive. It became clear that this was no ordinary disappearance. The environment itself seemed complicit in hiding the truth. Investigators who returned to the site months later reported a disorienting experience. Compass readings felt off, GPS devices malfunctioned, and the landscape seemed subtly shifted from memory. It was as if Highway 67 had transformed into a place untethered from reality, a corridor where logic and time were unreliable. Every clue discovered over the years, from fleeting shadows to abandoned items, built a picture of a mystery far larger and far stranger than anyone had anticipated, leaving an indelible mark of fear on the town and those who dared investigate. As weeks turned into months, and months into years, the town tried to rebuild a sense of normalcy. Daily life resumed, businesses reopened, and children went back to school, but the disappearance of Deputies Hanson and Reed left an unshakable shadow. Every police shift included reminders of that cold, foggy night, and every new officer joining the force was briefed on the chilling case. Highway 67 became a road people respected, or feared, passing it cautiously and rarely at night. For the families, life became a careful balancing act between hope and despair. Parents, siblings, and spouses carried the weight of uncertainty, clinging to the possibility that the deputies might return, yet haunted by the reality that decades had passed with no answers. Birthdays, holidays, and anniversaries became bittersweet reminders of absence, each one marked by an aching void that no gesture or community support could fill. Their grief became part of the town's collective memory, a subtle, persistent presence in the air. The local police department worked tirelessly to keep the investigation alive. Cold case files were revisited, new techniques applied, and tips pursued. But Highway 67 seemed to absorb every clue, hiding secrets in plain sight. The deputies' patrol car remained missing, and each search felt like walking deeper into a labyrinth with no exit. Even seasoned investigators reported an eerie sensation when patrolling the stretch of highway, an invisible weight pressing down, as if the fog itself was watching, waiting, and judging every step. Meanwhile, the town's residents shared stories that blurred the line between fact and folklore. Fishermen, hunters, and truckers all had accounts of strange lights or shadows near the highway, rumors of voices calling from the trees, or even figures vanishing before their eyes. Children whispered of ghostly patrol cars appearing on foggy nights, while adults debated whether it was imagination or something more sinister. The mystery became embedded in the culture of the area, a living legend that refused to fade despite the passage of time. Even decades later, Highway 67 carried an invisible tension. Travelers would sometimes slow down, feeling a cold draft sweep across the car or an unexplainable chill along the spine. Nighttime drives were avoided by most, and locals warned outsiders about the foggy stretches, recounting tales of lost deputies and vanished cars. The absence of resolution created an atmosphere thick with anticipation, a collective unease that nothing, and no one, could entirely shake. The town moved forward, but the questions lingered like shadows, haunting every corner and keeping the story of Hanson and Reed alive in memory and fear. It had been a quarter of a century since deputies Hanson and Reed vanished, and Highway 67 had long settled into a quiet, uneasy routine. But in 2023, construction crews arrived to widen a stretch of the infamous highway, clearing overgrown brush and excavating old shoulders. As bulldozers cut through layers of soil near a forgotten service road, something metallic caught the eye of one worker. At first, it looked like a piece of scrap, a relic buried in the mud. But as they dug closer, the unmistakable shape of a patrol car began to emerge. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town and the police department. The car was partially buried under decades of dirt, leaves, and debris, almost perfectly preserved as though someone had intentionally hidden it from view. Officers arrived immediately, sealing off the area as forensic teams began photographing and cataloging every detail. The patrol car, untouched by looters or weather, seemed frozen in time, a chilling snapshot of the night the deputies disappeared. For the families, this revelation was a mixture of relief and horror, proof that the men had been there but also a stark reminder of the unknown fate that still awaited answers. Inside the patrol car, investigators found signs of abrupt abandonment. Papers lay scattered on the seats, the radio still attached but long silent, and personal items, Hanson's badge and Reed's notebook, resting where they had been left 25 years earlier. No signs of a struggle, no fingerprints beyond the deputies, and no evidence of anyone having tampered with the car in the decades since it disappeared. It was as if the vehicle had been deliberately buried, preserved like a macabre time capsule, leaving only more questions about why it was hidden and what had truly happened to the men who drove it. The local media swarmed the scene, and soon the story made national headlines. The image of the partially buried patrol car became symbolic of the unresolved horror that haunted Highway 67 for years. Experts weighed in, speculating on how someone could have concealed a vehicle for so long without detection. Theories of foul play, secret criminal operations, or even supernatural involvement swirled through the press and the town alike. Yet, for all the attention and conjecture, the deputies themselves remained missing, their fates still cloaked in mystery, their disappearance as confounding as it had been 25 years prior. For the town, the breakthrough reignited old fears. Highway 67, once again, felt alive with a presence unseen, as if the road itself remembered the tragedy. Families returned to the area, retracing old paths and revisiting the places they had avoided for decades. Each detail about the recovered car, its exact position, the items left inside, the lack of any signs of struggle, fueled both grief and fascination. The breakthrough offered proof that the story was far from over, and while the car had been found, the chilling questions about the deputy's ultimate fate loomed larger than ever, hanging in the fog that still clung stubbornly to the highway. Once the patrol car was excavated, forensic teams moved in with extreme caution. Every inch of the vehicle was meticulously examined, from the worn floor mats to the dusty dashboard. Surprisingly, despite being buried for 25 years, the car's interior was almost pristine, as though preserved by some unnatural force. Fingerprints belonging to the deputies were found on the steering wheel and radio, but there were no traces of anyone else. Even the seatbelts and door handles bore no signs of struggle, raising questions about how the deputies had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a fully intact vehicle. Investigators discovered a series of subtle anomalies inside the car. A few pages from Deputy Reed's notebook had been torn out and carefully tucked under the seat. The radio, though inactive, seemed to have been fiddled with, wires slightly exposed, suggesting an attempt to send, or perhaps block, communication. Forensic specialists noted scuff marks on the floorboards and scratches on the inside of the doors that didn't align with any typical use. It became clear that whoever, or whatever, was involved had taken extraordinary measures to conceal the truth, leaving only fragments for authorities to piece together. Analysis of the surrounding soil also revealed disturbing details. The dirt beneath the car had been deliberately compacted and layered in a way that suggested careful planning, not random dumping. Tiny fibers, possibly from clothing, were embedded in the soil, but there were no human remains. Experts concluded that the car had been buried deliberately, almost surgically, and that the disappearance of the deputies was far from a simple accident or random act of violence. Every discovery pointed to a calculated, premeditated effort to erase all evidence. And yet, the perpetrators had overlooked the car itself, the chilling centerpiece of a long-hidden crime. As the investigation deepened, psychological profilers and criminal experts weighed in. They noted that the meticulous burial and the absence of any bodies indicated an unusual, almost ritualistic element to the case. The scene inside and around the car suggested someone with intimate knowledge of the deputies' routines, someone who had planned every detail for decades. Investigators began to consider chilling possibilities: the involvement of an organized criminal, a secretive cult, or a predator with extraordinary patience and cunning. Each theory brought its own horror, and none could be dismissed entirely. The forensic team also revisited the previously collected eyewitness reports from decades past. Every odd detail, the flickering lights, the shadows in the fog, the phantom sightings, suddenly gained new weight. Could some of the witnesses have unknowingly observed the perpetrators in action? Or had the road itself been a stage for something more sinister than anyone had imagined? The analysis made it painfully clear: finding the car was just the beginning. The true story of what happened to Deputies Hanson and Reed, and why someone went to such lengths to conceal them, was far more complex and terrifying than anyone had realized. Even after the patrol car was uncovered, Highway 67 didn't feel like the same road it had been before. Locals reported an eerie stillness that seemed to cling to the fog, a heavy quiet that made every creak of a tree branch or distant horn feel amplified. Some drivers claimed to see headlights cutting through the mist, only to discover an empty stretch of asphalt when they slowed down. The highway had become a place of uneasy memory, a road haunted not by ghosts alone but by unanswered questions that refused to leave. Families of Deputies Hanson and Reed struggled with a complicated mix of relief and dread. The car's discovery confirmed that their loved ones had been somewhere, buried secrets hidden in plain sight, but it offered no answers about their ultimate fate. Town gatherings often included hushed conversations about the case, and locals frequently revisited the highway, hoping to glimpse a clue, a hint, anything that might shed light on what had happened. Each visit, however, seemed to reinforce the sense that the road itself was guarding its secrets jealously. Over the years, Highway 67 had developed a reputation far beyond the town limits. Truckers, travelers, and tourists who dared drive the foggy stretches reported strange occurrences. Cold gusts of wind inside their vehicles, flickering lights in the distance, shadows moving just beyond visibility, and at times, the faint echo of a siren that seemed impossibly close yet impossibly far. These stories circulated online and in forums, blending eyewitness accounts with urban legend, leaving an indelible mark on the collective imagination of anyone who dared investigate. Even new generations of deputies and residents felt the weight of the mystery. Patrols along the highway were conducted with heightened caution, and old-timers often offered warnings. Never drive alone at night, never stop for flickering lights, and always respect the road. The town had learned to live with the presence of the unknown, treating Highway 67 as a place where reality and fear intersected. The vanished deputies had become more than a missing persons case. They were now part of the town's identity, a lingering question that shaped every story, every glance toward the fog-shrouded trees, and every hesitant step along the roadside. Despite the passage of decades and the sensational discovery of the patrol car, the mystery of what happened to Deputies Hanson and Reed remained unsolved. Locals swore that the highway seemed alive, that it had a memory, and that it held the echoes of that fateful night tightly. Each foggy evening, each distant light flicker, and each unexplained sound served as a reminder. Some questions have no answers, some mysteries refuse to die, and some roads are forever haunted by the secrets they carry. The disappearance had left an invisible scar on the town, a chilling presence that lingered long after the physical traces of the deputies had been uncovered. As the fog rolls over Highway 67 and the sun sets behind the distant trees, one thing is certain: the story of Deputies Hanson and Reed isn't over. Their patrol car has been found, but the men themselves remain missing, swallowed by the shadows of that night. The highway holds its secrets tightly, and the town will never forget the chilling mystery that haunts its roads. And so, every time you drive past a quiet stretch of road, when the lights flicker or the wind whispers through the trees, remember, some disappearances leave behind more than questions. They leave a warning: not all mysteries are meant to be solved, and some roads are better left alone.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.